Take your career to the next level. The University of South Florida, St. Petersburg is offering a master's degree in digital journalism and design. Do the entire program from home and complete it in as little as 1 year. For more information, email journalism@usf.edu or call 727-873-4544. The cost is reasonable. The experience is invaluable.
Hey, everybody, if you like this podcast, can I ask you a favor? I'd love to make sure you also subscribe to the Poynter Report newsletter, where I bring you the latest news and commentary about the media industry every weekday. If you're already signed up, thanks a lot. But you should also check out some of the other great newsletters we have at poynter.org/newsletters. My colleague, Kristen Hare, focuses on the local news scene in communities all across the country every Wednesday with Local Edition. My editor, Ren LaForme, gives you the roundup of the best media stories from Poynter every Friday in his Open Tabs newsletter. And if you care about misinformation, fact-checking, getting to the truth, the Factually newsletter has you covered. And if you're looking for some great ways to improve your skills in writing, leadership, or ethics, our weekly training digest has you covered. Just go to poynter.org/newsletters and sign up today.
From the worldwide leader in journalism, truth, and democracy, this is the Poynter Report Podcast, a joint production between the Poynter Institute and the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Now here's your host from the Poynter Institute, Tom Jones.
Hey, everybody, and welcome into the Poynter Report Podcast. If you follow the media or you follow media news, which if you're watching this podcast, that likely means that you do, then you're certainly familiar with my guest for today's episode. He's Oliver Darcy. Oliver was a longtime media reporter for CNN, and then a year ago did something completely unexpected, completely risky, went out on his own. He started his own newsletter, his own venture called Status. It's a newsletter that comes out 5 nights a week, and he just recently started his own podcast called Power Lines, along with his editor, and we'll talk a little bit about the podcast. We'll talk a lot about the media news and all that, but first, welcome, Oliver Darcy. Thanks for joining me, man.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tom.
I want to talk about a bunch of media stuff with you, but I want to get in a little bit to your story and your decision to start what has turned out to be a really fantastic newsletter. And I'm not just saying that. I'm consumed by this stuff. I read you every day. You're at CNN. How long were you at CNN, first of all?
About 7.5 years. 7.5 years, I think.
7.5 years, really well established. You're working with Brian Stelter, on the Reliable Sources newsletter. Mm-hmm. You're on TV all the time on CNN, appearing on Reliable Sources. Then CNN makes a decision. They cancel the show. Stelter leaves CNN. You pretty much are the only media reporter at that point at CNN. I mean, there's other people who cover pop culture and movies and that sort of thing. But you're the main media guy. Everything's going great. By all accounts, by my reporting, everybody's reporting. CNN's happy with you. And all of a sudden, we get this email a year ago, and it says, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to venture out on my own. And what went behind the decision? Like, I'm going to give up working at this place where I have all the resources I need. I can go, it's stable to try this new venture. What was it behind the decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I just had this entrepreneurial itch to expand the brand beyond a newsletter. I mean, as you noted, we've launched a Status podcast, Power Lines. It's on video and audio. Subscribe if you haven't already. But we have also expanded into live events. We've held 2 events in the first year. We want to do more with that. And so I had this idea of taking the brand beyond a 2D print product that came into inboxes and moving it into something bigger. And I also thought there's a good business that could support, provide the infrastructure for a independent media newsletter and company. And frankly, CNN really wasn't interested in expanding the brand beyond a newsletter. I mean, they were happy with 4 nights a week. They didn't really have any ambition to go beyond that in the newsletters and the media space. And I did. And so that was really we just didn't see eye to eye where we wanted to be. And I was, my contract had expired or was expiring. And I was thinking about where I wanted to go in the future. And I could have stayed there and I could have done the same thing and effectively treaded water for a few more years. Or I could have which is the path I chose, taken the much more risky path and leaped into the darkness a little bit. And I just figured that the reward would be much better, and life is too short not to bet on yourself. So I made the choice to exit, and here we are today. And I'm actually, it was definitely the most terrifying thing I've ever done, leaving a corporate job like that. But it certainly is easily one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Was there ever a moment where I thought, maybe pitching what you were talking about and what you ended up doing with Status, like pitching it to another, like more traditional news outlet, like I'm just throwing names out there, like a Politico or like a Vanity Fair or somebody like that, like somebody who might be interested. And yet there was the stability of like a regular paycheck. You knew how much it was going to be. There were resources there. Was there any moment where you're like, maybe that's the way to go? Or did you even try that?
I mean, there were some, I'd say very, early discussions or, with a few possible, but at the end of the day, like I think that large media companies, Tom, and you know this because you cover media, are no longer very interested in covering media.
Yeah.
Right. And you've seen that in a number of ways manifest itself across the industry. But about 10 years ago, there was really robust media coverage, I'd say. I remember Politico had a huge team. There was morning media was a thing that they put out every single day. The CNN had a huge team of media reporters. There was the obviously the columnists at the New York Times. There was also the ombudsman at the New York Times, and at the Washington Post. They had a huge media team, and I think in the last 10 years, particularly really over the last few years, media companies have pulled back from that as they've become the center of the story with Donald Trump in the office and with their business models under threat. And so there's not really an interest, I think, from them in covering media in the way that I want to, for sure. And so what I actually think is great is it's opened up this market void. I think there's certainly an audience interest in these topics, but they're not getting this sort of information from the traditional press and Interstatus. And that's what we're doing. And we're 5 nights a week. And then we have a sixth newsletter. It comes out Saturday mornings. It's the column by John Pasentino, my former editor at CNN, who we brought on earlier this year as executive editor. And people have responded accordingly, and they really can't seem to get enough of this stuff. And so in a way, by these other companies not being interested in covering media, it's allowed Status to thrive and succeed.
I notice, I can tell the difference between the newsletter that you were doing when you were doing Reliable Sources with CNN and a newsletter you're doing now. There does feel to be a different tone to it. I mean, do you sense, like, what is different about what you're doing now with Status than what you were doing when you worked at a legacy place like CNN?
Sure. I mean, a number of things. One, I think when you have skin in the game, the way I do, you are certainly more motivated every single day to deliver scoops in a way you're just not when you're a salaried employee and there's no bonus and you're just getting a flat paycheck, whether you have a scoop or you don't. And I actually think that the business models for these big players needs to change because it's more beneficial for the reporter and the company at the end of the day if there's some motivating force behind them outside of base salary. But outside that, I mean, I'll just be honest, it's very difficult at times to clear reporting at a legacy news organization as large as CNN. There are a lot of roadblocks and bureaucracy you have to wade through, and it can be very challenging. So, a lot of times Status is packed with what aren't major scoops, but interesting pieces of information. Someone's leaving this outlet for that outlet. This happened here. It might only be a few sentences. To get that stuff cleared at CNN, it often would take a lot of time. It has to go through a procedure, and you have to go through red tape. And it really, in some ways, de-incentivizes reporters from wanting to deliver information, and it can be challenging to overcome those obstacles. And I think if you talk to a number of people at that organization, they would tell you the same thing. I think the executives there are aware of it and have pledged, to remove some of these obstacles. But and I understand it to some extent because when CNN reports something, people, it needs to be bulletproof. I would just say though that when I'm reporting something, it's still bulletproof, airtight. None of our scoops have been questioned. They've all basically been either come to bear or they've been confirmed by other major news organizations. It's just that I don't know. At a major news organization, it's challenging.
No, I get exactly what you're saying, but I do think it's clear. Like, it's not you're just not throwing stuff against the wall. You're not just saying, "Hey, this may or may not be true." It's not those.
I would say the standards at Status are equally as high as CNN or any other news organization. We never publish anything that wasn't airtight, that I wasn't, willing to put my name on. It's just that we're more nimble and able to react faster to the news cycle. We don't have to go through an army of editors who are just, and I think that it's good, obviously, to have oversight, and we do have oversight. My editor looks at everything, and he's been editing for a couple decades now. But it can also be, there's a saying, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. When you have a dozen people overlooking copy and making, and it's on an email chain, and I'm always almost working after work hours have completed. That sort of thing, I think, is not always beneficial to the process.
One of the things I do respect about what you've done, because a lot of people go out on their own and they're truly on their own. And you went out and you hired John Passantino, as you mentioned, as an executive editor. You worked with him at CNN, so he's obviously has experience in this area. How important was it for you to say, I need somebody here, not just to make sure everything's spelled right and the grammar's right, but that you can have somebody to bounce ideas off and say, hey, is this a story? Is this a scoop? Are we doing the right thing here?
It was the utmost importance. That's why he was the first hire. And we're going to hire more people. Just that I wanted someone in there who I can, not only be a thought partner with, but also a business partner with, and bounce ideas off of. I mean, a lot of times when I'm trying to think about what kind of analysis to provide on a story, I call up John and we just kind of talk about the story, and ideas come to fruition during those phone calls. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point we should make in the newsletter tonight. And honestly, that's how sometimes the newsletter comes to be. Or even if we're balancing like which story should be the top tonight, which story is less important. I mean, having a thought partner is so crucial. And then obviously checking to make sure, when you write a story and you're writing thousands of words every day, as anyone knows, when you're writing, you can kind of gloss over the errors that you might have made, right? Because you've read the copy 1,000 times, and so having fresh eyes on something is important. Having fresh eyes to stress test each sentence, make sure that everything's factual, that we're comfortable putting it out there, super important. And so, yeah, I think editors are, quite frankly, undervalued. And I view John and I are kind of like a mind meld. We're talking throughout the day, from early in the morning until late at night, on the weekends. I mean, it's very crucial to have a thought partner like that. And Status is certainly way better with John at the helm there.
Well, I appreciate you saying. I'm sure my editor, Ren LaForme, I talk to him more at midnight than I do anybody else in the world. That's for sure. Was there ever a moment like during the last year you're like, what the heck did I do? Well, or has it just been like pretty much smooth sailing from the start?
No, I mean, and I wrote about this at the 1-year anniversary mark earlier this month. I think that there's this misconception, when someone launches a independent venture, particularly on Substack these days, there's often like a glossy profile, whether in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or somewhere about so-and-so is leaving to start this thing. There are these fancy photos, and there's a big celebration on Twitter or X or wherever you are, Blue Sky. And I think people just take it for granted. Oh, they're a big name. They have over 100,000 followers. They're probably set. They're good, right? That's not the way it is. It's actually extremely terrifying behind the scenes. The numbers don't move up as fast as one might think. And it's a slow burn in terms of getting people to take out their credit card and subscribe. It's difficult enough to get people to enter their email and hit, I want this newsletter. Getting them to take out their credit card and spend a few minutes doing that is another level of challenging. And so it's not easy. And I think, when I was packing up my office at CNN, I was thinking, there's no going back. There's no edit, undo. I made a mistake. I almost equate it. I think everyone's done this at some point in their life. Your dishwasher stops working and you go on YouTube and you're like, how do I fix dishwasher? And it looks really easy on the YouTube video, right? Take this out, unscrew this, replace this, super easy. And then you go to start doing it and you're like, wait a second, this is a lot more challenging. Let me just call up someone on the phone and get them a professional to come in here and do it. I'm out. I'm not doing this. There's no doing that when you exit a big company and you start your own thing. There's no going back. You are on your own. It's sink or swim, and that's a daunting feeling for sure. And it took me, I'd say certainly a few months to start feeling a little more comfortable. Like this is working. This is going to work, and status is going to be successful. But out the gate, there's a million things that are hitting you from a million different directions. And there's certainly no guarantee of success. And if you just look at it from a business perspective, most small businesses that start fail in the first year. Mm-hmm. So I was certainly cognizant of that as well.
I know you talked about this in that post, that 1 year post that you had about status. And was there a moment, I think was it the Olivia Nuzzi, Robert F. Kennedy scoop that you had? Was that the one was there a moment like that where you're like, all of a sudden you saw a jump, or you saw like, okay, this was a game changer for me in this journey?
No, there's never been a game changer. That's the thing that I think that's the biggest misconception. I think that a lot of people saw that Olivia Nuzzi RFK scoop and they thought, oh, there's all this attention on it. People must be subscribing. And, that's not even our highest, that's not even the story that's translated the most free subscribers to paid subscribers or given us the most upgrades. It's just not. I mean, a couple things. One, that doesn't some stories might convert more readers than others, but it is, if you look at the chart, it is a slow burn up the mountain, a steady climb up the mountain. There's no huge spike where oh, that's that one story. Right, for us, it just doesn't work like that. Maybe if I don't know, it just doesn't work like that. We haven't seen anything like that. I mean, there are some stories that do better than others, but it just, that's not the way it works. And the second thing I note too is on the story, like the Olivia Nuzzi story that we had, within I think 45 minutes or so, other outlets had started confirming it. And so the information wasn't really even exclusive to us for that long. You could find it for free on CNN.com, for instance. And so the stories that actually perform really well for us are the ones that we had exclusively for a long period of time, that people are forced to actually pay to unlock the paywall. Right. If you can get information for free somewhere else, people will choose that over the original source every single time.
You mentioned people going out on their own, and you think about someone like Jim Acosta or Chuck Todd's doing his thing now. Terry Moran's talked about doing his thing on Substack, and there's a lot. And those are big names. Those are names we recognize as But it seems like there's a million people, as you mentioned just a moment ago. Okay, I'm going to strike out on my own. I'm going to do it the way I couldn't do it before. Can that be a successful business model, or is there any worry about oversaturation? Do you worry that, man, there's a lot of people coming into this space and there's not enough money out there to pay for all this content?
I'm certainly glad I launched Status a year ago versus today. I think that even in that 1 year, a lot of new people have left legacy media and tried doing this. I'd say that if you have information that people really want and are willing to pay for, you'll be good. I think that information tends to be exclusive information, scoops, and that's what we see drive the most conversions from free readers to pay readers. And those people know that we're consistently delivering information first, and information they often can't get anywhere else. We, for instance, reported that David Ellison, who's now running Paramount and CBS News, was in talks to recruit Barry Weiss to a senior position. And we had that story exclusively for I think 3 weeks before the New York Times confirmed it and said that they advanced it and said he was in talks to buy her publication, The Free Press. But, people know that we have that kind of information way before they're going to read it in some other outlet. We reported, for instance, that MSNBC President Rashida Jones, the former president there, was eyeing an exit by Inauguration Day. I don't really think anyone matched that story. Maybe CNN did, but not. It certainly wasn't matched widely. We had that story exclusively for a while until she basically left. And so, if people want to be in the know in the industry, I think they know they should subscribe to Status, and they pay us for that information. A lot of the people I worry about who are launching independent ventures, who aren't the Jim Acostas of the world with huge followings of millions of people, I think the analysis is much more difficult to monetize.
Yeah.
Because you can find it for free on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitter or X, on Blue Sky.
Anybody that has a keyboard, a device.
Exactly. And so getting someone to pay you money for analysis, I think is just so much more challenging. Now, it's not to say it's not possible. I think there are certainly people that, the audiences will pay for to hear what their perspective is on a story. I just think it's a lot harder when you're not a huge name like the ones that you mentioned.
Right. I do want to get into some specific media stories, but I just want to remind everybody, if you're watching or listening, give us a like, subscribe to our podcast. It really helps a lot. Oliver, you mentioned Skydance a few moments ago. They recently took over for Paramount and now in charge of CBS News. What do you get the sense, like, what's the morale right now at CBS News, and how much of a worry is that things are going to change now with the new owner? And you mentioned Barry Weiss, who has a rather conservative outlook. I think it would be fair to consider her more conservative. What kind of vibe do you get from CBS these days?
I think, Tom, a lot of anxiety is coursing through the hallways over at CBS. There's and for a reason. I think there's a few things on the horizon there. One is certainly going to be cuts, layoffs, and budget slashing, and I think that's inevitable. And I think everyone understands that that's going to come down the pipeline. The executives that have just taken over Paramount Global, which is CBS News' parent company, are not hiding that either. They've talked about doing it in one fell swoop across the company. But and Jeff Shell, the new president there, has talked about how he's excited to run this company efficiently, which is code for making cuts. So that's going to happen to CBS News, and I think that's spurring anxiety over there. And then the separate thing is that this organization has really been through a roller coaster over the last year, with Donald Trump suing 60 Minutes and their parent organization not really, I think it's fair to say, having their back in a real way. They settled that lawsuit, even though they even themselves said it was meritless. And so that was just the beginning. And that led to really plummeting morale inside the company. But I think that with David Ellison there, some of the things he said about the news coverage and the tone of it, and some of the moves he's made in private, or at least try to make in private, like bringing Barry Weiss aboard, have led people to be really concerned about what the future of the editorial looks like there. And is this going to be a news organization that moves into more MAGA-friendly territory?
I thought, at first I thought, well, maybe once the acquisition went through, I thought, well, maybe that'll sort of get the bad taste out, that the people who made the decisions to settle were eventually going to leave, and there would be a way for CBS News to reset. But with Ellison now, it doesn't sound like a reset is necessarily a good thing.
Well, also, I mean, there's this whole talk of, is there a side deal that David Ellison has with Donald Trump to run these public service announcements for causes the president supports? And the president has openly said there is, right? He said there's upwards, I think, of $20 million in PSAs that he is expecting. And David Ellison has not denied that. And, we had a press conference with him in New York a couple of weeks ago, and he was asked point blank a number of times whether that was true. And he did not directly answer that question. And I asked him, I said, do you pledge not to interfere or meddle in the 60 Minutes coverage? And I asked everyone on stage if they would pledge not to do such a thing. And there was no answer to that either. And so I think those sort of statements coming from David Ellison, or a lack of statements coming from David Ellison and his new executive team, have led people inside the company to be worried.
Bill Owens left as executive producer of 60 Minutes. I mean, do you see a scenario where a lot of they have some big time journalists there where they would say, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this anymore?
Certainly. I think that they're waiting to see what happens right now. They are very hopeful, they're thankful that Tanya Simon has been named executive producer, and that the new team didn't bring in someone from the outside and just plop them into that role. So that has inspired some, optimism, but I think it's cautious optimism, and they're waiting to see, is this team going to interfere? Are they going to kill a 60 Minute story? Are they going to pull back from their criticism of this administration and the coverage of this administration? what does it look like? And they haven't really gotten any answers. And frankly, it's way too early to tell. They just took over this company. And if you're David Ellison, while he symbolically went to CBS News first, that's probably not where his mind is at. I think he's much more focused on the money-making assets of Paramount and Global, and that's really not CBS News.
Somewhat similar situation going on to Washington Post, where you have an owner who, if you would have told me 5 years ago, Jeff Bezos, how's he been for the Post, I would have said, what great news. This is a dream owner. He's has a ton of money. He's putting a ton of money into it, and he's staying out of the way. And now he's clearly not staying out of the way. They've completely redone their opinion section. I still find their news section to be pretty strong and produce good stories, but obviously they're hemorrhaging readers. What is the future of the Washington Post? What's the vibe you get from that?
I mean, I don't know. I think that the issue there is, there's a lot of issues there. And it stems, I think, from Jeff Bezos' selection of Will Lewis to be the publisher and chief executive of that company. And under Lewis, who was supposed to remake this paper, bring it back into being a profitable machine for Bezos. A lot of things have happened, but I'd say the big things would be they've shed a lot of subscribers because of Jeff Bezos' desire to alienate the audience in various ways, including killing the endorsement of Kamala Harris during the election season. And they've also shed talent in unprecedented ways. Basically every major byline, whether on the opinion side or on the news side, has exited the paper. I shouldn't say every major byline, but
some big names, really big names. A
very large percentage of the names that you would have recognized as being part of the Washington Post on both opinion and news have left over the last 6 months. And so now you're left with a paper that's struggling financially, but also now can't retain any talent. And that's not great. I think the people, you mentioned that the news section has still produced scoops and it's still being read. And I think that's a testament to how strong this institution is. But I think by that day, it just gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And what's striking is that Bezos does not seem to give one damn about it. I can't remember exactly when this was, but hundreds of Washington Post staffers wrote a letter to Bezos saying, when you're in town for inauguration, please just stop by the newspaper, visit us, get a temperature check. We want to talk to you. We want this to work for both of us. We're open to your new ideas. Just please come visit us. And he didn't. He snubbed them. And instead, he's doing foam parties, off of yachts with his new wife. And his head just does not seem to be in it anymore in the way it was a decade ago. And I don't think that bodes well for the newspaper there.
I have to ask about the place where you used to work, CNN. Yeah, I think it was a couple weeks ago now. I first was mad at you, and then I was mad at me because you had an item about Newsnight, which is this show. It's on at 10 o'clock. Abby Phillip, very talented host. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like an embrace debate show. I'm a big sports guy, so it almost reminds me of a show you'd see on ESPN in the mornings, like Get Up or First Take, where there's arguments. And you had, I thought, a really spot on analysis of it, which is what are we doing here? I think you used the word circus-like, and I don't think that's hyperbolic at all. I think that's exactly spot on. It almost seems like outrage for the sake of outrage. And it leads me to a bigger question of what is that show specifically, and then sort of a macro view. What's the point of that? What's CNN trying to do with that show, do you think? And then what do you think they're trying to do as a network when it comes to stuff like that?
That's a good question. I think if you're asking what they're trying to do with that show, if I had to guess, they're trying to show that they have Trump supporters on the network who are invited to share their views, and liberals on the network, and it's a very both sides approach to news, which seems very outdated to me. And I also assume, and you can see this in the ratings, it's a slight ratings boost for CNN, and it generates viral moments on the internet, and they get people kind of talking about CNN. In terms of I wrote about it from I don't know what news value this provides the person watching. It's kind of like watching Jerry Springer. You want to watch the fight, but when you walk away from the TV, you didn't need to watch it. It didn't really enlighten you in any real way. And I think it's really, choose my words carefully, I don't know. It's really irresponsible, I'd say, for CNN to put people on the air like Scott Jennings who are misleading the audience about very important issues, very weighty issues. And it's not, to me, becoming of CNN to treat these very important issues, significant issues, whether it's the starvation in Gaza or the war in Ukraine or any of these big issues that are facing the country,
immigration, whatever. Yeah,
immigration. To have someone like Scott Jennings on that show night after night. It's not only him. We talked about Jillian Thomas,
Jillian Michaels, yeah.
Jillian Michaels, the personal trainer. To misinform the audience. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're misinforming the audience, and a lot of the show ends up being Abby Phillip, the host, having to fact check these people and them not wanting to hear the fact checks, or the guests getting into a huge fight. And that just seems to be the formula for that show. I don't know. Again, I don't know how, if you're coming at it from a perspective as a news organization trying to inform your audience, I don't know how this achieves that. I think there's certainly a place for a show where people with different points of view talk about issues. The problem is that if you're having Trump supporters on, they're almost never tethered to the facts. And so they're actively shoveling garbage to your viewership. And then the host has to try cleaning that up. And that doesn't do anything for really anyone.
The thing I noticed about that show, first off, is like Abby Phillip, who I like a lot. And I don't want to speak for her, but she seems exasperated at times as the host of that show. And the other thing I'll say about it, Oliver, is it seems to me like, I don't know that you're attracting conservatives to watch your show because you put Scott Jennings on there. It strikes me as that the whole point of it is, let's put Scott Jennings on, have him say whatever he wants to say, and then as a viewer, I get to watch him get beat up. And that's sort of the point of why it's almost like hate watching in a way.
I don't know if that's I would suspect that this is more of a David Zaslav owns and John Malone sort of like owns CNN now, and they want conservatives to share their points and liberals to share their points, and we let the viewers decide. I just think that's a very outdated approach to the news, and it's particularly because like these Trump supporters are not delivering arguments that are based in fact. Right, they're misrepresenting the situations in any of these issues, and so that's the issue. I mean, I think it'd be great if we had honest conservatives on, but the problem is that they would say that Donald Trump is not engaging in good faith in whatever he's saying, and it become basically an anti-Trump program, and they don't want an anti-Trump program, and so that's the problem in news and generally right now because Donald Trump is anti-truth. If you are going to be pro-truth, you're going to be by default against Donald Trump, and these organizations don't want to be perceived as anti-Trump. They want to be perceived as fair, and so this is the dilemma they face. And I think that the CNN 10 p.m. show that it kind of manifests very well there. It's not only 10 p.m. We shouldn't even focus on that. It's all across CNN. They're putting these people on who are not engaging in good faith, I'd say. I think if you look at Scott Jennings, for instance, his past comments about Donald Trump, like right after the insurrection, or just where he was 5 years ago, he was much more forthright. He was much more critical of the president, and he has transformed into this like MAGA mouthpiece for Donald Trump, seemingly, I would guess, trying to get some sort of position in one way or another, or have a chance in politics. And he knows that he's smart enough to realize that to be in the Republican Party today, you have to be completely on board with Donald Trump. There's no room for criticism. And you've seen that happen across conservative media too. Someone like Ben Shapiro, who wrote a column literally saying, I will never, 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 ever support Donald Trump, was holding fundraisers for him the past election cycle. So this is not new and not unique to CNN's conservatives. But I just don't see I just think it's irresponsible. And if your mission is to inform, don't put people on who misinform.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say like Jessica Tarloff goes on Fox News as sort of the liberal voice, but I think her commentary is based in fact. I think she comes at it from a more responsible
Well, she comes at it from the perspective of she's really fact checking a lot of the garbage that her co-hosts are spewing. Right. Jesse Waters says something, Greg Gutfeld says something, and Jessica Tarlov is the foil, certainly, but she tries fact checking that stuff. It's the opposite on CNN. And I think that, again, the broader issue is that Democrats tend to be living in the world of like absorbing information from credible, trustworthy sources. And Republicans tend to be absorbing information from like trash blogs like the Gateway Pundit or Breitbart or, whatever, Fox News. And so their relationship with reality is not as strong. And when you put them on the air, it's on full display for everyone who's paying attention and not being spun by the propagandists at Donald Trump's disposal.
One last thing on cable news, MS Now. Any thoughts on the name, the brand, and where they sort of go from here?
I think this will be a blow over, and anytime anyone launches a name or a rebrand, everyone mocks kind of what it is. I was only confused by why they thought that each letter had to stand for something. I think they could have just called it MS Now and just said this reflects like the urgency of now in the moment that we're in. I don't know why it has to stand for like my source, news, opinion, world. That just seems weird to me. Don't know how that came to be. I think it makes the logo kind of clunky when you have those words underneath the letters. But I imagine in a year from now, Tom, we just refer to it as MS Now. And, I think the big thing for them in this rebrand is they're preserving MS. And I think that's how a lot of people actually refer to MSNBC these days. They just say, I'm watching MS. What's MS doing? And so them keeping those two letters, I doubt anyone's going to care about the following.
You know what I found a little bit odd though was that they used this word now. NBC streaming service is NBC News Now, which and I thought the whole point of this was to sort of like we're going to show that there's a separation between NBC News and MS Now or MSNBC. Like I just thought it was odd, like they would pick a name that was kind of associated also with NBC News.
Well, I think it's just, and Tom, a name that it reflects like, it's like breaking now, urgent, it just reflects like the urgency of the moment that we're, it's happening now, right? Like, there's a certain news terms or vocabulary. It's very limited to choose from. So I think now just fit nicely because it was 3 letters, easy. And it, I just don't know why they insisted it had to mean something. Each letter had to mean something. It just didn't seem to make sense. I would have just called it MS Now and moved on. I also don't like, since we're on this topic and nitpicking, don't like how there's a space between MS and Now.
Yeah.
Just say MS Now and just move on.
So my question is what's Trump's nickname going to be for it? I'm sure like MS No or something like that. I'm sure
it's a problem for him because he's been saying MSDNC for so long. Right. But I've already seen the conservatives on the internet Photoshop the graphic in a number of ways, and so I'm sure he will not have a shortage of ideas.
Name, I'm fascinated by names. Like I didn't like Semaphore when it first came out, but then now I like it. Puck, I actually think is a pretty cool name. Status, where did you come up? Like where did that name come from? Status.
Well, it's a word that means a few things. So I was actually thinking of like I wanted it to be one word, not like a 2-word name.
Right. Easy
to spell, and mean something. And I was thinking of Time magazine. And it's like, oh, it's the moment in time. I was like, what's a word that means like a moment in time? And I'm like, oh, status. It's like, what is the status of something, right? And that's kind of what we're delivering every night, a status report. What is the status of the industry? What's going on? It also means like, where do you stand, right? What is your status? And so I just thought that was a cool word. And anyone who's named anything knows you have to check 1,000 different places to make sure you can name your organization that word, and what the URL is available and whatnot. And so it's actually very pricey at times to purchase a 1-word URL. And I looked into it, and status.news I could purchase. It was still pricey. It was actually the priciest thing in terms of launching Status, but I was able to buy it, and I just like the word and what it means.
It's a cool name. It's a cool name. Before I let you go, any one media story that you think right now is being undercovered? Is there something out there that, because we're so focused on Trump and we're so focused on things that are going on at legacy places like the New York Times or Washington Post or or CNN or whatever. Is there another story out there that we as media people are like, yeah, this is something that's not getting the attention that it probably should?
I've been thinking in terms of news media, the Los Angeles Times and the implosion over there has not deserved near, if that was happening on the East Coast to a major East Coast paper, we would be talking about it left and right. I mean, and I think you see that with the Washington Post. The Los Angeles Times now has a red-pilled owner who has laid off a number of people, introduced a number of bizarre ideas, made a number of strange comments in the press, openly praising and trying to get in the good graces of this administration. And it just does not seem to have generated near as much media attention as I would have anticipated. And for us at Status, it's good because we have that story almost exclusively to ourselves. We report on what's going on there, I'd say every few weeks, and it's not good. It's never really anything great. But it's been weird to me that other news organizations it just has gone undercover. If we were not reporting, I think, on them, a lot of the inner workings in that paper would not be, people wouldn't know about them.
Tell people who are watching, listening, go ahead and promote Status and Power Lines. Where can they find it? What can they do to sign up?
Yes, go to status.news. That's how you subscribe to Status. And we'd love you to subscribe to our podcast. We're talking about the same issues Tom is doing on a weekly basis. It's called Power Lines. You can subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But it's called Power Lines, and that's our new baby, Tom. We're putting a lot of work into that one.
Well, it's great. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, man. This was a really interesting conversation. You got to come back again too, please.
I'd love it. That'd be fantastic.
Thanks so much to Oliver Darcy. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks to watching. Subscribe, like. It really helps us a lot. This was the last episode of season 3, but we're coming back with season 4 in just 2 weeks. We got a lot of great guests lined up, so hopefully you can join us then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Poynter Report Podcast. The podcast is produced by the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Executive producers are Elliot Weiser and Ren LaForme. Producer is Tom Jones, and our director is Christopher Campbell. And a special thank you to Neil Brown and Dr. Mark Walters.